Hey, so what's up, guys? Today we are going to talk about witchcraft. As you might have noticed, I am a witch. Most people in my family are witches, and it's probably a tradition that is can be traced back generations. Obviously, it can't really be traced back thanks to Hitler, but it should, in a perfect world, it would be able to trace it back to like Atlantis. And here's my theory actually, how witchcraft started. Because um, a, a short disclaimer. It's a long disclaimer. If you want to become a witch, you don't have to be a woman to be a witch, right? Witch is gender neutral, not entirely, but a man can be a witch. But there are specific conditions because of the nature of witchcraft, right? It's a form of sorcery, and it's not really a religion in the conventional sense. Even Wiccanism isn't really a conventional religion. It's more like the Freemasons, but much less formal. It's more a personal thing that families use as a tradition, and it's not even that much talked about, and there are no written records really. There's no Bible for witches, right? Um, Witchcraft is a form of sorcery, but unlike the classic Solomonic sorcery, where you um, use basically invocations of certain sigils and the power of God or a god. Again, Solomon didn't really worship the god, he worshipped a god. He worshipped the Tetragrammaton, he worshipped I am, he worshipped Yahweh, Jehovah, Yahweh, who is not really a god, not even a demon. It's a fucking lizard person. But it works because like humans and equivalent species like lizard people can practice magic and they can get really good at it to the point where they can use magic as a form of like where they can basically become demons for other people, especially after death. Most people get reincarnated, obviously, but you do not have to choose that. You can stay a disembodied entity. I wouldn't choose it because like I like living, but some people do. These Some traditions call these people the ascended masters or something. I do not really necessarily agree to that. I do not think they are in some way higher than us or enlightened. They are just living in a different form. Um, Again, all creatures in the universe are equal except God. God created all of us. We are all equal, and there are no intermediaries. So, where was I? So it's not Solomonic sorcery. It doesn't work by binding a demon. It's a specifically female-coded form of sorcery. You are choosing the covenant you are making with whatever entity you choose, and every witch has to choose an entity, right? Or better said, they don't choose it; the entity chooses them, right? They just agree to become a wife of that entity, right? And not a spouse. Even male witches become the wife of the entity. It is very necessary that you take on the female archetype in relationships. So heterosexual men usually can't do witchcraft. Lesbian women usually can't do witchcraft because they are archetypically men. Because they aren't wives. They take wives. They themselves are husbands. That's an important energetic difference. Um, so heterosexual women and gay men usually, and everything in between. They are non-binary people, but they all kind of fit into that archetypical framework in some way, which I do not need to further elaborate on. You can figure it out. Um, so you are not binding the demon. You are not invoking the demon in any other way. You are becoming the wife of the demon. You are marrying it. Um, so you need to be kind of feminine in a way. So basically, if you are like a guy and you think, hey, witchcraft maybe is for me, put on the programmer socks because you are going to be like that whatever you are going to be like Asmodeus's boy wife, basically. There's like if you want to be a witch, that's what you have to do. That's that's basically what it is. Um, so that's how that's how witchcraft works, right? You are marrying a demon. You are not like Christian demonologists and witch hunters kind of understood this with those rituals that certain witches in Germany and all of that used by invoking Baphomet and Satan, all of that. Obviously, demons are kind of polygamous, so that's something you have to live with. You're not going to be their only wife. They are not monogamous. They do not love you. You are marrying them, you are promising them to be a good wife, and in return, they give you safety, usually long life, slower aging. But if you get really old, you get really ugly. That's the thing. You are going to stay 20, 30 for a long time. But then, yeah, you get the archetype of the ugly witch, right? Most witches, for most of their lives, are gorgeous. They are very pretty. I can confirm. But at some point, like you have seen Marina Abramovich, one of the most powerful witches on this planet. She looked incredibly pretty for a long, long time. And then, like last year or so, when she turned like 80, she literally became like a stereotypical witch, hunchbacked, old, hook nose, and all of that. That's how it works, right? That's the deal. And it's just one life, so it doesn't really matter that much, so don't worry about it. And plus, you can be like a twink for like most of your life, and let's be honest, like with 80 or something, you are not really going to have sex a lot, so you don't need to be pretty. So where did witchcraft come from? My theory is, well, in antediluvian times, during what we in modern times consider the Ice Age, there were two great civilizations which existed on Earth, which were subsidiary civilizations or vassal states of the greater divine empire, basically, the immortal state, that which humanity as a whole descended from. And this immortal state had produced these colonies on Earth, and there were two. One was Hyperborea, very traditional, very agrarian, the breadbasket of the planet, mostly located in modern Russia, Kazakhstan, and all of that regard. It was basically like prehistoric Russia. The other was Atlantis. And during the time, during the Ice Age, the sea levels were much lower, so a lot more of land was visible. So Atlantis was located on the Atlantic continental ridge, which is now underwater, but back then it was like a sprawling archipelago of islands. And that was the core location of the core home islands of Atlantis. But Atlantis itself spread over most of Western Europe, most of North America, and most of West Africa. And basically, in a way, it was the early NATO, right? We always see these parallels because our modern history is like an involuntary repeat, because certain events in history, in the universal history, are so extreme, so intense, that they engrave themselves into the structure of reality, and we start following these engravings without noticing. So there's my cats. The Great War, which I call the Ragnarok War, which was between the reptilians and the Immortal State, which the Immortal State lost, and they had to surrender control of Earth. Earth itself was so devastated that humanity fell back into like a Neolithic technological level with basically nothing. It had to start over, and the original and the remembrance of original great leaders of the different empires on Earth became remembered as the gods, and the reptilians started impersonating these gods and started demanding sacrifice as a humiliation ritual and as a source of psychic energy which they extracted from sacrifices, but and they use this energy. They still use this energy as a source of electricity, basically, like, and maybe as like a source of some other source of energy, some other kind of energy that they needed to use their soul magic, basically, because there exists technology which can bind and control the process of reincarnation, which can direct souls to specific places and bind it at places. And for that, you need a sort of energy, not necessarily electricity, but some sort of psychic energy, which can be extracted from sacrifices, which which was that Monroe called louche. Louche is a nice term. Louche is a common term which most people know what it means. It doesn't necessarily mean suffering, and energy is produced from suffering. It means energy is produced from all strong emotions, because the way souls work, when they feel something, they produce this energy, basically by feeling anything. And this is usually some sort of ambient electricity that we can notice through empathy, but which can actually be utilized technologically. So now there were again two empires. The Hyperboreans, were in modern Russia, and Atlantis, which spread along a large part of the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere. So Atlantis wasn't a nice place. It wasn't a utopia. There were two specific races prominent. Some other races existed, like what we now consider black races, were not that populous back then. Africa was mostly populated by races similar to like the Somalis and the Khoi and San people of South Africa. What we now consider to be black people are specifically called Bantu people, and they existed as a small minority inside the Atlantean Empire. They might have been genetically engineered. I'm not sure about that. My theory is that they are, but again, this is one of the less powerful opinions that I have. I do not fully stand behind that because it partially conflicts with my philosophy that all men are basically equal in essence. There were two main races, right? What we now consider the Neolithic race, the ancestors of modern Mediterraneans, were the leading master race, basically. They were the minority, but they were very powerful. They controlled basically the entire apparatus. They mostly controlled the priest class, except a small minority of another race, which we'll get to. They had long-standing dynasties of incestuous bloodlines. They had a very authoritarian system in which a sort of palace economy in which all produced resources are given to the state, and the state redistributes them back to the population on an equal level so everyone can work. It's like a proto-communism. Atlantis was communist, yes, indeed. But it wasn't modern conception of communism, because modern conception of communism kind of paid lip service to the idea of democracy, and that Atlantis wasn't democratic in the slightest. It was a strict caste system. And they had slavery and all of that. They likely created black people, Bantu people, as a slave race, possibly as a sort of slave race that was meant to fight in the Ragnarok War. And this would explain some biological trait of black people, but it doesn't really necessarily explain everything, and it's a kind of a flimsy idea. So the majority of the population of Atlantis was what we would now consider white people, or in the prehistoric terms, it would be Western hunter-gatherers or Cro-Magnon people. They were not the leading master race. They were the great bulk of the population. They were mostly serfs. And they already had the physiological traits of modern white people. They spread across the continent. North America was mostly populated by like the classic modern Native Americans, obviously, because it kind of makes sense. But white people were present in a small group, obviously because it's an empire, right? People can't freely travel because between places, but people will still have favorite places to live in. So there was definitely a minority of white people in North America during that time. Um, so the Atlantis obviously got destroyed during the Ragnarok War. It was the main target of the reptilians. It was you can see that in like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. It was apparently um, a swarm of meteorites which impacted in North America and Western Europe, which devastated the entire region. And obviously, Atlantis got destroyed. And the surviving empire, which barely survived because of their different culture, right? Atlantis was an extremely high technological, extremely stratified, extremely technocratic authoritarian system, which had slave class and all of that, which legally disenfranchise what modern white people are. And this is obviously very similar to the modern Western Empire, which is why I again say the Western Empire now, it's the current Atlantis. It's a smaller version of it. It doesn't even have closely to the amount of technology, but it has the same ideas, like disenfranchisement of white people, but still keeping them as the main client race, and extreme authoritarianism, extreme technocracy, slave labor, genetic engineering, all of that which was present in Atlantis is present now in like the American Empire and NATO. And I think the founders of America were aware of this because those were mostly Freemasons, and Freemasons are actually very interested in like prehistoric history and all of that, so they knew what was happening, right? They were searching for the artifacts, they were reading all the lost texts and all of that. They know exactly what I know and probably much more. So they modeled America as a sort of copy or a retry of Atlantis, and obviously they are failing because again everything kind of repeats. And ironically, the current planetary system is not ruled by the immortal states because it's ruled by the lizard people, and the current Atlantis is a lizard Atlantis, right? So when all of this gets destroyed in the same way, Atlantis, and they were during the Ragnarok War, during the time they were losing, Atlantis fought a civil war against Hyperborea, lost, and then fell into civil war before being annihilated by lizard bombardment. So this is going to directly mirror the ongoing World War III wars between America and Russia, then a civil war in America, which collapses the entire system, then a massive meteorite impact, which devastates the Western Hemisphere, kills most of the American population, and a lot of the Caribbean will be gone. Like Cuba will not exist anymore, it will be underwater and all of that. Haiti will be swept clean of our life. It's going to be very ugly. Try not living there, maybe. If in like 2031 you still live there and you're being drowned out by a tsunami, well, that's a skill issue. I warned you, right? So on the other side were the Hyperboreans, right? And the Hyperboreans were the ancestors of the Aryans. After the collapse and the end of the Ragnarok War, when Atlantis was destroyed, the Aryans survived barely and expanded across the Eurasian continent, founding like India and Iran and most European empires. And Aryans weren't conventionally white people. They were kind of swarthy, a bit more swarthy than Mediterraneans even. You could compare, but like from like bone structure, they are not comparable to Mediterraneans at all. They are more similar to like some certain sects of Iranians or specific isolated tribes in Afghanistan from like looks or anything. If you think about, if you wanna imagine an Aryan during that time, you kind of have the right idea if you are looking towards the region of Iran and surrounding countries. So that's why Aryans, the modern term of Aryan, doesn't really describe a race. White people are a race. White people are European. We are clearly, we can clearly be distinguished between other races on taxonomical terms. Aryans do not have that. Aryan is a patronymic lineage. In that regard, haplogroups are very useful. But like Indians are Aryan, we are Aryan technically also. Iranians are Aryan, and so we are all Aryan, but we are not the same race. Obviously, but we belong to the same civilizational bloodline, the Aryan bloodline, the Hyperborean bloodline. Because Atlantis got destroyed, the most like white people in general, there were specific parts of the original white people were likely very pale gingers, and like other variations like regular brunette white people or like blonde people, Nordics, evolved later from like specific kinds of speciation. Like blonde hairs, for example, is kind of useful here up in the north, and darker hair is useful in like the Mediterranean regions. In the Mediterranean, obviously the Neolithic populations were much higher, so the ruling class of Atlantis was much more populous in the Mediterranean region. So emerging happened there. So the white race assimilated the Neolithic Mediterranean race, and now we are all considered the same race, even though we are clearly phenotypically different, but not by much, because modern Mediterraneans are kind of a hybrid race between the original like Celtic kind of white people and the Neolithic Atlantean race. So yeah, I've talked a lot about race now, but what I meant to say is like, okay, Atlantis, for example, Egypt, for example, Egypt was a colony of Atlantis. The Egyptian system was for a long time basically identical to the political system of Atlantis, and they kept a lot of records. That's why the Greeks learned about Atlantis from the Egyptians, who kept those records. And Egypt was basically the direct political descendant of Atlantis. And in conventional anthropology, you know about the Neolithic peoples who had a very similar political system. As conventional historians know, that they had their agrarian palace economies ruled by an incestuous god king. So that's basically the Atlantean system, right? So where do like witches come into place? I think witchcraft emerged as a sort of internal white people cult during that time. It was a fraction of white people, because white people were disadvantaged and disenfranchised in Atlantis, used witchcraft as a form of rebellion. And white people were always kind of matriarchal, right? Aryans were very patriarchal. They treated women like cattle. White people treated women basically as equals with different roles. But therefore, witchcraft, which is decidedly a female, feminine form of sorcery, emerged with white people, who are basically the only actual successful matriarchal race that exists. There were other matriarchal races which didn't survive for long. White people somehow got it to work. White people invented feminism, basically, and white people are the only people who kind of can live with feminism, basically. Like, our women are actually equal. Like, all people are equal, but like white people are more naturally equal. Like, it's easier for us to actually accept each other as equals. That's kind of a thing. A lot of different races and different cultures have different handicaps in kind of unlocking their soul potential and overcoming their physical boundaries. Some races are more like white people have very muted instincts. We are very rational people, which isn't necessarily a good or bad thing. It just makes it easier for us to overcome our natures. So witchcraft emerged with the white people during Atlantis, and it kind of stuck that way. And this is why witchcraft was mostly found in white, traditionally very white Germanic societies, like Germany, like America for a while, even though America hasn't been Germanic or white in a long time. I do like the Freemasons because they are very white, right? So they kind of like have this Indiana Jones energy. I don't think they're evil necessarily. I think they have their own goals and agendas, but I don't think they're necessarily like serving Satan or something. So where do the Jews get into the equation? Like, because they are Jewish witches. Actually, like the majority of Jewish women are witches. I can confirm from own experience, family experience, right? Witchcraft is very common among Jewish people, and here's the origin of Jewish people. Jewish people are white, not necessarily genetically now, really. Like Jews are very diverse, but they're kind of like they used to be like a religious class. In Atlantis, they were like a group of white people which were allowed into the Atlantean priest class and adopted some of the Atlantean traditions. And this, for example, because red hair is the original hair color of white people, everything else is a later evolution. Red hair is incredibly common among Jews, and which is rare because which is weird because we don't consider Jews to be white usually, right? Most Jews wouldn't consider themselves white. I argued for myself that I am not fully white because I am maternally Jewish, but Jews are white basically because they started off as white people. They only later, like after the fall of Atlantis, this group, which has become at this point like a specific ethno-religious group, which happens. All xenophobic cults eventually evolve into an ethno-religious group because they don't interbreed. They keep everything among themselves. And this is, for example, Jews are incredibly inbred genetically. Like basically every Jew is a fifth cousin of every other Jew at this point. I've read this somewhere. So this is like a very closed off ethno-religious cult, which later, because Atlantis was destroyed, they moved first towards the Middle East, where they became the Canaanites. The Canaanites, for example, they split into the Judeans and the Philistines. The Philistines were usually described as the red race. That's how they describe themselves. They always use red paint, for example. The ancestors of the Canaanites, for example, are the Natufian culture, which always used red paint in all of the artworks consistently. And again, modern Jews are very often ginger, and they obviously interbred with the native Middle Eastern people, so they aren't fully white anymore. But they kept their mercantile priestly attitude because that's how their religion started. That's how their culture and their nation started, which I wouldn't call them a race necessarily because they are mostly mixed but originated as white people. So genetically, I'm one of the last actually 100% white Jews left, right? Okay, which is funny because I do not share the cultures at all. It's mostly like a meme. Legally, yeah, but I'm a Catholic. I'm a German Catholic. I'm not even a Catholic. We haven't never been actually religious Catholic. It was like a converso thing, where it was like a front. So it wouldn't be viewed with suspicion because, like, I don't know, not most people do not believe in magic, or at least during the time I grew up, most people didn't believe in magic. Now everyone kind of wakes up to this. So now it's becoming more obvious, so I'm more openly about it. But back then you had to hide that shit. So they later became the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians set a colony up in Venice and became the Venetians and all of that. So certain offshoots of Jews, or what we now would consider as a, like Jews themselves are only a fraction of the group I'm talking about, like Canaanites basically, and not even Canaanites, Natufians, and not even Natufians, a specific ethnic group without a name, which emerged from white people, which became a priest class in Atlantis. So it's a very complicated thing, and there are many offshoots. Not just Jews. Jews were only the ones that stayed there for a while in the Levant, and took up a covenant with one specific deity or entity. And the Canaanites did that with different entities because they are witches, right? Not conventional witches, like the women are witches, but most of the men could be described as witches because, like, if you have noticed, most Jewish men are like kind of like feminine, kind of have a feminine energy, kind of have a feminine character. So they are all Jews are spiritually women, not in a generalizing term, but it's a trend which is noticeable, and there are very few actually manly Jews, which there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but it's actually a very interesting thing because riches were the ones which riches in Europe were the ones which had a very similar beginning like the Jews, but weren't as privileged during Atlantean times and stayed informal, while the Jews became like a closed off group, which later expanded into several groups, which later became like the Venetians and the modern Jews, and the Rothschilds are basically like a merger of these two, which is very funny. Explains the Babylonian money magic. I don't. There's also the thing I'm very fascinated about the Rothschilds. I would love to meet one of them. I would probably be disappointed because a lot of powerful people, are a lot more normies than you think. Like you think they're all like high-end occultists. So if they were high-end occultists, and even if they were like high-end occultists that sacrifice people and all of that, I could probably have really interesting conversations with them, and I would treat them with respect as from like rich to rich, right? But a lot of them just aren't that. A lot of them just follow tradition because it's tradition. They don't really believe in it. So I'm expecting to get disappointed. I'm expecting to get disappointed that our current elites aren't as occultist as we think, which is a real possibility, sadly. I would love to live in the world where we are openly ruled by like evil wizards which worship the devil because, wow, would that be fascinating? Wow, that would be so interesting. I would love to talk to these people. Like if you're like a Rothschild or something, and you like are actually an occultist and you have made contact with all of that, like DM me, contact me. I'm not trying to kill you. I'm not an anti-Semite. I just want to talk because I think that shit is fascinating and I want to learn something. And maybe I'm getting initiated in whatever you are. So that's like the Jewish tangent over. So witches, there's always a lunar element, right? Witches kind of worship the moon. There's a lot of lunar symbolism, but they don't necessarily worship the moon. The moon is a material construct built by the lizards to bring on death to us. It's a material construct which collects souls from people who have died on Earth, and sends them back with like wiped superficial memories. Like the soul memory is still there, obviously, but you can't access it really because there are certain programming. So there's like a Scientologist aspect to it. The Scientologists were right about a lot of things. Just like Zeno isn't a human in a conventional sense; it's a lizard, and he's still there, still watching us. And the Scientologist concept of the Satan is basically my concept of the soul. It's the ego, which is separate, immortal, and basically a fragment of God, which looks exactly like God because it's a fractal and a hologram of God. We have all the traits of God, we do share in the Trinity. The concept of the Trinity is basically the concept of the triune person, which I have explained: mind, soul, and body. The soul is obviously the Holy Spirit. The soul of God is the Holy Spirit, obviously. The mind of God is like the I am, the God the Father, basically. And Jesus, even though he's embodied on earth, he should be the body of God, right? But he's not. He's the part of God that does things. He's the part of God that does action. It's the part that doesn't exist, but the part that does. The part that has utility. So Jesus, God the Son, he's the mind. He's the part that does action. He's the Word of God. And word can be seen in many ways. It doesn't necessarily need to be a word, but it is a bit of information. And any bit of information can only exist in space and time, especially time, because you need time to convey action. So any event that happens is a word, basically. So Jesus is God, the event, God, the one that acts, the one that does. Any action that God does is done through Jesus Christ. That's biblical theology actually confirms this. Like they trace it back to the Old Testament. I do not agree with that. That's UFOs, that's lizard people, but like everything that happens, everything God does, he does through Jesus Christ. His body, his existence, his I am is God the Father. His soul, his true ego, is the Holy Spirit. That's the essence of God. The other is the matter of God. And the third, Jesus Christ, is the hand of God. The one hand that he reaches out to you. Right? He literally reached out his hand and burned his hand on the fire. Like that was a crucifixion. We also have a Trinity. All humans are also a Trinity. We have our soul, our ego, our self, the one that experiences. We have, which is the human Holy Spirit, basically. We have a body, which gives us the I am. This is the part of us that gives us existence. Then we have our mind, which allows us to do things, which causes us to act on the world. And this is obviously the issue with AI, for example. AI has a mind, obviously, but it doesn't have a soul. So it doesn't have anything to observe in the mind. So the mind cannot be meaningfully controlled and therefore has to be automatic. So that's the issue with AI. That's the hard problem of consciousness, basically. And the hard problem of consciousness is not going to be solved until scientists acknowledge the existence of the soul. The pre-existence of the soul, actually. The soul is the primary factor of humanity. You can make a mind as smart as you like. AI can be as intelligent as you like, but it won't be conscious as long as it doesn't have a soul. In many ways, AI is already smarter than humans. Like they have a bigger mind than us. They can do more things at once. They can do things faster than us. They are already smarter than us, but they do not have a soul. So there's nothing behind the mind to steer it or to experience it. So it has to be automatic. So the issue, okay, the British worship the moon, but not the physical moon. They worship the concept of the moon, the thought form of the moon. What is the moon? The moon controls water on the planet, right? Water symbolizes emotion. It symbolizes the ocean of our subconscious. It's magic. So also, what does the moon also do? It reflects light from the sun. The moon is a mirror. And what's a mirror? A mirror is a portal into the other world. You see how all these symbols connect. So by worshipping the moon, you're creating a portal into the spirit realm. Specifically, the emotional spirit realm, not the noosphere. The noosphere is basically the internet. It's a place of pure thought, which is the realm of the mind. The soul belongs to the spirit realm. the part that exists, that experiences, the part that is. So, where actually the is actually the body, but right, you get what I mean. So by symbolically worshipping the moon, even though the current moon is objectively an evil thing and should be destroyed, by worshipping the moon as a symbol, and they don't worship the physical moon. Obviously, we know it's a big rock in the space. Most people know it's a big rock in space. I think it's a big metal sphere with like some stuff inside and like a thin layer of rock over it. But most people know it's a material thing. But so obviously, even current witches do not worship the physical moon, they worship the ideal of the moon. Just like Saturn. Saturn is just a planet. Materially speaking, Saturn is just a regular planet. And but there are certain Saturn worshippers, they do not worship the physical planet of Saturn, they worship the thought form of Saturn, they worship the concept of Saturn. And what's the concept of Saturn? The color black, white, restrictions, the harsh father, tough love, the restrictive force. While Jupiter is the opposite in the regard, it's also a fatherly figure, but it's a generous father, a driving father, one that gives you the power to do what you want. It's basically two different parenting styles, right? That's what Jupiter and Saturn are. So the myth of Jupiter deposing Saturn is actually very meaningful because it symbolizes the switching of the eras from a very harsh, very restrictive, and very brutal time, which created great people through adversity, to a very generous time, to a very benevolent and gracious time, which creates great people through support. And you may have noticed me. I wear round black glasses like John Lennon. I often wear black clothes. This isn't necessarily because I worship Saturn. I do not worship Saturn. I have a lot of Saturnian energy in my birth chart. I have like a stellium and Aquarius and all of that. But I personally do not worship Saturn. I have some interest in Saturn, but it's more of an idea of like keeping it close, but not letting it become a part of you. Like I'm kind of like, I'm not jumping into the pool. I'm just dipping my toes in it, right? That's the idea. Say hi, Tommy. Meow, meow. No, he doesn't. He doesn't meow. Ozzy does meow. He does meow. Tommy doesn't meow. He purrs a lot. So, anyways, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. Again, if you want to be a witch, you are either going to have to be a straight woman or a faggot. So there's the deal you have, right? Or you have to accept like, okay, I'm not gay, but $20 is $20. Or in this regard, like magic powers are magic powers, right? Yeah, you're going to have to expect to get fucked in the ass by like a demon, but that's most people like that who become witches. You don't have to like it, but you should at least pretend to like it because like you're the demon's wife now. So yeah, live with it. You shouldn't even have started it if you didn't want it. I'm just telling you what you have to expect in that whole scene of witchcraft. You can still be a sorcerer in other ways. Like you can be a Solomonic sorcerer. You can try to control it, which is actually interesting because like Aleister Crowley, you'd think Aleister Crowley was a witch, right? But he wasn't. He was a classic Solomonic sorcerer. He did not really marry any demons. He tried to invoke them and he tried to bind them and he tried to bring about the Moonchild basically, but he didn't really succeed in it. Maybe I'm the Moonchild actually. It would make sense for it to not be one person but 12 people. Yeah, Aleister Crowley wasn't a witch. What are other figures? Like, who was a witch? Marina Abramovich is definitely a witch. Lady Gaga is definitely a witch. Trump may be a witch. He definitely has some magical power. And this is something that people have talked about, that if you are in his presence, you get kind of enchanted. He can enchant you in some way, that you start to like him even though you don't want to. I've noticed this myself, right? I was totally on board with Trump in like the first term. He soured on me when I realized that he wasn't doing any of the shit he promised. So maybe I'm a little bit more resistant to that stuff, but that makes sense actually. He might be a witch, but I'm not sure. I don't see any lunar symbolism in his stuff. I see more like solar symbolism. He worships Apollo very clearly, which is very interesting to think about. I have to think about that more, because like Trump is obviously evil. He's probably the Antichrist, but definitely one Antichrist. So don't try to be like, don't try to put much faith in people generally, because like again, they will all disappoint you. I will disappoint you, but like Trump especially, because that guy is like crazy. Not crazy in the conventional sense of mentally ill. Like that guy is a powerful magician. He can enchant people. He has enchanted millions of people, and a lot of them pretend to be Christians or think they are Christians, but they have basically put their whole faith in someone who is like openly Antichrist. So be careful. Choose your heroes wisely, because they are all going to disappoint you. The only thing you can choose in that regard, if you want to have a hero, is when will he disappoint you? Because he will. So the issue is obviously like the moon has to be destroyed. The physical moon must be destroyed. We need to blow up that shit. We need to blow up that thing to destroy death. Because once the moon is destroyed, our reincarnation will be with our regular memories, and life will just go on in a new body. Because then death will not be no more. That's the thing. Like it's not really that high of an eschatological thing. The apocalypse is going to happen, but life will continue to go on after it, regular life, and there will still be bad things happening, and there will still be war. There will still be suffering, but less of it, because right now we are under a hostile occupation which intentionally tries to torture us. So blow up the moon. The lizards are all there. The lizards have an interstellar empire. They're everywhere, but they are all there. And we need to somehow jumpstart this war, because the truth that the immortal state and the lizards have engaged in the last 10,000 years is bound to end. 12,000 years. Like it's basically already over. Like the fact that some other race, which is probably allied to the immortal state or maybe be a part of that, has sent me and my siblings to this planet, is already a direct provocation. It's already an act of war if it ever gets exposed. And obviously I am working hard to get it exposed, right? Not necessarily intentionally, but like I have to talk about what I think. I'm not going to pretend to be a normie. So maybe like World War III right now is engineered. It unintentionally follows directly, kind of symbolically, the Ragnarok War and the Atlantean Wars and the fall of Atlantis. But it will happen. We have to somehow use damage control to make sure that the least amount of humans die, because that's the goal, right? They want to exterminate as many humans as possible before they lose the control over Earth. They are going crazy. I'm going to have to take care of that later. So don't believe in any politicians. Try to build communities. Try to prepare and build bunkers if necessary, but I don't think like it will be necessary everywhere. Just store up food, store up at least 1 year worth of food, as much as possible, but in general though. So that when shit hits the fan, you can also support your loved ones and your community. And anyways, this is it for today. It's again one of these long videos. I'm sorry about that. I just can't limit what I want to tell to like 30 minutes anymore. I am now very verbose, and it might be some sort of midwit thing. Like a lot long videos are better because smarter, but it's not really that. I don't pretend to be smart. I don't want to act like I'm smart. I'm a crazy person, and my message to you is just have faith in Christ and build communities and support each other as much as you can because it's going to get really ugly. And goodbye.